Let us pray. Almighty, most gracious and loving God, we thank you for the many blessings that you bestow on Southport, the people here, the city, and all around, and our visitors. We ask that you guide us to make decisions and guide our deliberations that we are worthy of those blessings. Amen.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. The first agenda item, E1, is the budget goal setting. City Manager, do you have a couple of housekeeping things you want to do first?
Thank you, sir. I want to appreciate everybody being here today. This is a very, very important meeting because of budget's coming up, our favorite part of this year, and we need to get your outlook short-term, long-term, and also I thought it would be a perfect time to think about a long-range plan for this new city manager, so keep all of that in mind. We need your input. It's important that we have it, and I've invited Ann White to help us today to do that, so that I could become a part of the discussions instead of trying to do both. So if you don't know Ann, she is a municipal operations consultant for the league. And she was very involved with the city of Charlotte and their budget office as their budget and evaluation manager, a grants analyst supervisor, and Ann has her master's in public administration from the university. UNC Charlotte. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Ann, and Dory will be our Vanna White and write things down. So we need any and all of your ideas today, very important. 7:30, because we have the luncheon. So.
Good morning, and thank you so much for having me here. Mayor, commissioners, aldermen, alderpersons. As Bonnie said, I have a large area in my municipal operations consulting for the league, and 15 counties, 120 towns. And I see alderpersons, I see commissioners, I see council people, and I'm going to the legislature and have a bill passed that says it can only be one name, because it would make it so much easier on everybody. I mean, even the press. You know, that would be one thing that we could do, make life easier. But alder comes from elders, and we respect our elders, and we respect each other, I hope. And that's one of the fundamental tenets for today's discussion, is that everybody has a chance to speak, that we let people talk. I may call time if that discussion gets a little long-winded, but I certainly want to hear from everybody. And I may call on you if I haven't heard from you in a little while, so please don't feel like I'm picking on you or anything. The goal setting for the budget is there's two components to goal setting. With a crowd, with a group like this, it's what do each of you want to accomplish, and then what do all of you want to accomplish as a team, okay? And we're going to work on both of those. When I say work on, we are going to collect information from you. We are going to try to not express opinions about the validity of your ideas or your comments. We may have to call some ground rules if it gets a little heated, which I don't expect. But we want to have an open and honest conversation. And we also want it to be effective and productive. So that's why we'll have limited ground rules, but mutual respect. So the outcome, as Bonnie mentioned, the desired outcome is a clear plan. We want clear budget goals. We want a short-term, medium, and a long-term perspective. The short term is going to be fiscal year 2025, beginning in July 1st of 2024 and going to June 30th, 2025. That's your short term. That's the annual budget that you have to adopt. The medium term is going to be anywhere from 18 to 36 months. That's going to be FY26, FY27. And then, of course, the long term is going to be after that, 3 to 5 years. And those two, the media and the long term, are, as Bonnie referenced, laying the groundwork for how your new manager will be looking at how to form and bring you information. So that's the basic outline for today. It's not very complex, and everyone will have a chance to speak, and I'm relying heavily on your participation in this discussion. So, Mayor, if you would like to get us started, I would like to know, I'm sorry, please forgive me. We had an assignment for you in the email that was sent out. We asked you to think about your budget goals for the next year and into the future. And I hope that everybody came prepared, but I'd like to hear just a little bit from each of you about what your perspective is, maybe on what you want to do today with your information that you brought to the meeting, or just start talking about what those items are. Mayor, would you like to get us started?
Certainly. I looked at the homework assignment as what we're going to do with discretionary funds, because most of the budget is tied up in things that we don't have much leeway in one way or the other. And understanding what that total amount of money going before we actually start the budget process is one of my goals, is how much money do we think we're going to have for discretionary funds? Because in the past, we've started off with a wish list that included everything that was millions and millions of dollars and going down to $100,000, but we never knew how to put that in to compete against the finite amount of money that is there. So I'd like the budget cycle to start with that kind of concept. And obviously, it may be a little bit fluid, because even with the required things, there may be things that we no longer need and we could cut and put that money over, but it would at least give us a game plan. So I broke it down into different components. I have the first one I wrote was actually Parks and Recreation, down into trying to figure out, I personally, and I'm only, when I speak here, I'm only talking about from Rich Alt, I personally do not think that Parks and Recreation should be split in half into a parks and then a recreation part. I've worked in all kinds of places, and Parks and Recreation has always been Parks and Recreation. But I think that we might want to look at two different, and there could be 3 or 4 different options, the 2 that I wrote down. One is we hire somebody who would be a supervisory rank that had parks and landscaping experience that could help do that, so we don't, if we're going to trim something, we trim it at the right time. If we're going to fertilize it, we fertilize it at the right time. All those things that we have not done necessarily in the correct timelines in the past, which may have caused the Franklin Park is the big hot topic now, which may have caused to the deterioration of the azaleas and stuff like that, and the covering up the tree roots. So I'm thinking maybe we either go down that route. There's recurring costs. You not only have the personnel costs, but you have retirement and benefits and all of that you have to budget for then on, if we're going to hire somebody at that rank. It also gives the department that department, and a number two person, in case the number one person has a medical issue, whatever, goes on vacation, does something. And we don't have, not all the departments can you actually name a number two. And so I think we have to start training people either internally or hire externally to start doing that part of it. Another option might be is not to hire that person, but hire a third party, an outside person, outside company that would come in and routinely do the landscaping concepts for us, so we knew what we were supposed to do when we were supposed to do it. We have staff that theoretically can do all of that stuff. We just have to make sure they understand when they're supposed to do it and how they're going to do it. So those are two options. One is you get to craft it long-term with an employee. The other one, you know, vendors come, vendors go, those types of things. So that's one issue. Another one, another hot topic that's out there is the old courthouse. When you throw that out, you're going to get all kinds of ideas about that. But the building has been sitting there for 4 or 5 years, slowly decaying. And I think we should start looking at how we might start the process of at least stopping that, remediate the mold, look at the asbestos. What does that mean for air conditionings to keep the building going? Not necessarily making a commitment one way or the other about its future use, but saving it from before it decays further down the line. And what does that look like as far as dollars? Because it's big dollars, even just to do that. And it's been sitting there for years without any really attention, as you can tell by the boarded up front window on the building. And this shoreline restoration, we have $5 million we had $5 million in the bank. We spent some of that on engineering costs, but we have to spend that by 2026, I believe it is. And I'm not, in my head, I don't have a real idea where we're going between now and 2026 to spend the $5 million, or the state's going to take it back up from us. They were gracious enough to give us an extension on that money, and so we have to have a plan this year how we plan to spend that money. How much? $5 million is not going to cover the shoreline restoration program, but if we do it in phases, as we've talked about doing, how much is each phase going to cost, and how much can we get done with the first $5 million as we try to figure out the remainder of that cost? So that's a big target right there, trying to figure that out. And then we had a discussion last night, and we're going to have more discussions on it, the infamous alleyways in the city. Where do they exist? Who has encroached on them? Who has been told they could encroach on them? Could you make them, the alleyways were originally created to be pedestrian walkways. That's what they were made for. So is it an option now, based on all that's happened and trees growing and things happen? Is it an option to turn it into a pedestrian bicycle path, a modified greenway to go north and south through the city, and so you're not riding your bike, or necessarily, I guess it could be wide enough to be a golf cart place, so you didn't have to go down Howe Street on your golf cart. But I'm not sure if that's how that would all work. Would work with the police department on that part of it. But I want to look at and what would it cost to clean them all up? Then there's road pavement, which we're going to have a discussion on on the 14th, I believe. The 4th, discuss how much does it cost per linear X yard something to go from curb to curb and pave things. And then how much could we put aside each year to pave something, X number of linear feet. Every time you do one of those big projects, it means one of the other projects is going to fall off the plate. So they have to prioritize that. And now that we've gone back to the RPO, the Regional Planning Organization, which is the component of transportation analysis that the Southport sits in, one of their big projects is the Greenway. There's lots of projects. That's just one of many. For Southport, that goes from the ferry. You'd actually the Greenway starts in Maine and it's supposed to end in Florida. It goes down along the Carolina Beach, Kerr Beach area. That's the theory. It would then get to the ferry. You come across the ferry on your bike or whatever you got. foot, and then you get to our side of the mainland, and it would go down Moore Street, across Howe, and up Lord, to some kind of merging place to the new 211, which if you thought about that you're going to ride your bicycle along a 4-lane highway, that might scare you, but it's actually, when it gets up there, it would be a separated pavement part of it. Now, we're hoping that most of those funds would come from the state or the federal to do that, because it's a lot of money. But we need to start asking those questions about, is there a component of that we would have to contribute? Is there matching funds of some sort, 25, 10, 50, whatever it is, matching funds, and do we start saving for that and pushing to see if we can get our portion of the Greenway started? It would theoretically connect to Oak Island. You'd go over the Long Beach, go down Long Beach Road, go over the bridge, go down the beach road. That's one path they have designed. And then you get to the other bridge and you go back over, and you eventually go up to 17 and down 17 to Calabash someplace. There's another one that you go from here all the way up to 17 and you take a left and you go down that way. So there's different paths it can take. Those have not been decided on yet. I think looking at the path they've already planned from Maine down, going over to Oak Island, because they're trying to stay next to the water, probably would be the most logical one. Let's try to nail that down, and let's look in the future. That's a longer range plan, but it's going to cost money, and we would have to start a capital fund to try to do that. Once we figured out, is it even feasible that we're going to get it funded through the RPO? So those are my discretionary fund things. I had personal wishes, but I threw those out.
Well, if you'd like to bring in some personal issues, I actually had both of those on the list to check in with you. That's not off the table in my agenda, but if you want to keep that off the table for your agenda, that's fine.
I was being a little humorous. Most of all those things I'm actually very interested in,
Okay.
As far as discretionary fund spending. Some are more important. We haven't done real road repair here since I think 1792. So we have to figure out what's the basic purpose of government, and then how do we serve that basic purpose first, and then all there's wishes and needs. Many of those that I put there are wishes, and then we have to look at the needs first.
Thank you. I was going to let the Mayor Pro Tem go second, but since she's not here, the floor is anyone. So would someone like to volunteer?
I took my. Oh. Somebody's TV remote has new batteries. I got batteries. I'll just use this for a moment. So I looked at my homework as more of a 30,000 feet perspective. I think one of the biggest short-term challenges we have with regards to this budget season is the sewer merger. So a large portion of our income is going to go away with that, and that's tied to a lot of salaries. So first and foremost, I think it's going to be a lean year. Second, short term is really focused on employee recruitment and retention. I think that we need to focus on taking care of our people so that they don't use us as a stepping stone to go somewhere else. They come here, they get trained, they get experience, and then they leave. I think that our asset maintenance, and I'm specifically talking as it relates to real property, our improved assets, City Hall, the courthouse, everything that we own, we need to be focused on what is our plan for maintaining those, whether it, the abatement that needs to be done at the historic courthouse, and the list goes on and on. And then I think short-term, make you feel good, make me feel good, wish list would be funding the inclusive park. I know that we're doing a public-private partnership in ways, but I think that would be great. And then as we think about medium and long-term, I think that a big focus needs to be on monetizing tourism. We've got to do a better job at keeping people's money here in Southport. And I don't know exactly how we do that, but I would note that when I refer to it as tourism and monetizing tourism, that I'm not just talking about those people on holiday. I'm talking about the 20,000 plus people and the more that are coming along the 211 corridor, and the 100,000 plus within the county that continue to use Southport because we are the downtown of Brunswick County. So that's my goals.
Than you.
Right ahead.
Many hopes and dreams and goals, but in fact, I brought my little book with me, but focusing on money, things that we might best spend money on, I think, and everything that both of you have said is good, but storm drainage. We have a serious flooding problem in this city, and it is a good thing that we are looking at the existing storm drains, finding out where they're clogged up, where the problems are, but there are not very many of them. And I mean, the term storm drain is actually a misnomer because it's actually heavy rainfall. There are so many areas in the city that end up with lakes in people's yards, in the streets. We need a system to expand the drainage setup that we currently have. And we also need to start preventing it in the first place by looking at how we handle development. We go back to the infamous debates on Oakton, and we don't know for sure whether what they're planning to do is going to flood out the hammocks. They said it won't, but we don't know because we don't have the plan for drainage. It comes after we have had to approve the initial site plan. And if we change that, which is a pretty simple fix according to our former planner, Travis, if we move that to the first site plan approval process, we will know better what kind of drainage problems we can expect. Parking, I've been talking about this for a long time. I think that a solution to parking is staring us in the face, but it will cost money, and that would be acquiring by eminent domain the area down at the yacht basin. Right now, that is zoned. Most of it is zoned residential and can be. An applicant can come in, and if they meet the requirements for the zoning, that can become houses. It will block the vista, which is one of the goals of our CAMA plan, to preserve our river vista for everyone. It's a lot of space that can be paid municipal parking, or even if we don't charge for it, but I think we should. I do believe that we would recover our investment in the purchase probably within 5 years, maybe less, depending upon how we handle it. There's all kinds of side effects of that. Will that drive people to be parking in rights of way and having the usual conflicts over rights of way? But at any rate, it is a large open space that can hold many, many cars. and could become available for such things as festivals, as the wooden boat show is there for the most part. You know, most of it is used for the wooden boat show once a year. There are a lot of possibilities for what we can do with that property. It ain't gonna be cheap, and I don't know how we would pay for it, but it's one of my goals. The real estate, we have an awful lot of buildings. Some are excessively used and crowded, and some are very underused. A good, solid plan that we can all agree on will be the best use of our public buildings. Sell some, maybe buy some, preserve some. And then I'm gonna beat my favorite hobby horse. We need electric vehicle plug-ins. As many as we possibly, I mean, whatever you think of EVs, that's the future, and the future is actually already here. I've decided not to buy an EV that is currently for sale down at the Motors down on Howe Street, because it's only a 250 mile on one charge. So it would be awfully nice for people who are coming into Southport to be able to plug in while they're here, as well as our own EV vehicles, which I trust we will be shifting to, if not totally EV, at least hybrid plug-ins. And finally, dear to my heart, and I believe to many people, because it has been brought up over and over again in Parks and Recreation planning, a connector from Low White Park to Taylor Field to Kingsley Park. We've got to buy or acquire in some way, perhaps by donations, the property that does the connection. And that way, people can walk the whole way, possibly bicycle the whole way, but having more hiking and biking trails was the number one thing in our Parks and Recreation master plan, and that's a start. I have about 100 more, but I'll spare you all. I believe others will bring these things up. What was that?
One, it was not shorter, and two, there was nobody at this table who thought it was going to be.
I thought that was really, I mean, I could have read all this out.
Alderman Mosteller, would you like to go next?
You. So some of mine are projects, some of them are sort of goal values things. Sort of for me, a number one priority for our budget planning, near and long term is, and it's something we've already discussed, but I want us to keep it in our minds, is to develop a budget document that receives the Government Finance Officers Award, Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. And that will, the way that budget is structured, it's a 5-year budget. It is really significant for our future planning. So that number one for budgeting. I wondered what the status of the building inspection department fees are going to be. You know, we talked about it having to be a separate fund, and I didn't know if we were creating it, because it has to be spent a particular way if we're creating a separate fund, and what staff and facilities expenses can be attributed to those funds, like some of our planners and all of that as well. And then, of course, I'm looking forward to the sort of piggyback on what Robert said about staff, is the pay study analysis, and looking forward on how we can do that. Also, I know we prioritized in our last budget cycle the training and education, and it also included for our committee members and that sort of thing. I know our planning staff currently is really thin. We're missing 2 positions, but like the Board of Adjustment, being able to have training modules and things, which we've done in the past, but it's been a while. So anyway, that, as far as projects, prioritizing the relocation of the police station, police department, you know, we've got to figure that out. It's not that we're going to immediately build a building, because that's not going to happen. That's a long-range 3 to 5 year goal. But we've got to figure out a way to relocate them such that then y'all can function better in City Hall. Yacht Basin dredging is on our this year's budget, not budget, but this year's priority list. So following through with that, that's a hugely important part of our community and the welfare of our community as it silts in. Piggybacking on Rich's update, where we are and with the shoreline stabilization and when we're expecting the Olson report that we're waiting on, and making that plan, that's in the middle term, because we have to do it by 26. Again, piggybacking on Rich, in addition to road construction, we're in dire need of some sidewalk repair. Sidewalk evaluation and repair. I've seen a lot of work done on the west side, and I can say that as I walk a lot, and there's a lot of sidewalk that needs to be addressed as potential trip hazards and that sort of thing. And it could be something that's an interim phase, but I think it would be helpful if we could prioritize that. Create policies and application of traffic calming devices. These are future projects, not necessarily budget so much as create policies on the types and application of traffic calming devices for our community streets that are overwhelmed with traffic. I don't know what that is, but to have some policies around that, and can maybe consider establishing a traffic committee and update our transportation plan for a future goal. We had a traffic committee before several years ago, and so that's something that has existed in the past. Instead of department by department, maybe create an umbrella aesthetic policy for consistency. Applies to things like signage and facility updates so that we have a consistent look, you know, and how we approach things with colors and that sort of thing. I don't know, Historic Preservation Commission maybe could play a role in that conversation. I don't know what that would look like. Then for the planning department, of course, fill the planning staff positions, which we know is a goal of ours. It is a short-term goal of ours. Because we funded an additional position that's not been filled last year. And we created the Historic Commission. So along with this, we also need to create an entry corridor overlay district. Zoning to protect, that is also critical, like the Historic Preservation Commission, to protect our corridor coming in as far as character. And then Lo, to your point, stormwater update was not included in the last UDO update, so anything to address some of what your conversation is around that, so.
Can I just diverge just for a second? On the stormwater stuff, and this is my ignorance, is our inability to judge the worthiness of the stormwater plan, which is currently at the end, after we've already approved the plan, is that something we have the authority to actually change in the UDO, or is that something that the state mandates it because DEQ says that's what it's going to be?
What I think I know is Mo's not here. What I think I know about that is that the state has standards.
Right.
Our standards are theoretically, can be higher. Our standards can't be lower. And so I have been told, it's been said before in meetings, that our standards were higher than the state standards. But that doesn't mean, one of the things that I think is an issue is we don't really govern impervious coverage. And when you start talking about stormwater, impervious coverage is huge. And we have no
Standard.
governance of that. And it's because we've been sand, but now with more development and it's now in talking about the management of stormwater, it's a different conversation.
The reason I ask is because before we do all of those other things, we have to figure out whether or not we have the authority to do it. And then I don't know, we can certainly talk in a different environment about how we get to that if we go in that direction. But I was just always confused about why we put it over here if we actually could put it over there. But I digress. I'm sorry. Are you done, ma'am? Alderman Spencer, you're up.
I would like to say that the coverage and the impervious coverage, and making sure that we get rid of impervious and have pervious wherever we possibly can, and there are multiple ways of doing that. I didn't know if we were supposed to talk about that or just things that we spend money on, but changes to the UDO are one of the ways we can get that done.
And we have that coming up for you Tuesday? Tuesday, some UDO discussion. Mark, you're up.
I will admit that I'm very anxious in this conversation. I have a heavy burden on my own self when I make these comments because it's a lifetime of watching Southport change, things happen. And it's heavy on me because when I make things, I'm looking for what my 16-year-old and what his children might have to deal with. So it really is, a lot of this is about what our vision of Southport is, and it's not all the same, and that's the problem. And things are changing so rapidly that the mood of different issues changes almost every 5 to 6 years. So we're going to have to make plans that are consistent with a long-range vision of what we want to do and make those short-term steps towards it. Is tourism paying the bills? Someone last night made a statement, why are we worried about giving the tourist a place to park? It is a real issue because we're providing all these services, we're creating all this tax revenue, but a city that it was just built 25 years ago gets twice as much tax revenue that we do. Do we want to continue to be the mule of Brunswick County, not the downtown, but the mule? Let's don't glorify it and make ourselves feel good. They're wearing our infrastructure out. Are we going to be so inviting? Come and wear us out. Take everything we've got for free. So we got to get a goal, get a plan. And it's not necessarily build the parking lot down there, invite more people in. I'm learning that as I get older, that we're asking people to take everything we've got. So it's what our vision is, and that leads into our income issues. How are we going to make money? We're not going to have water and sewer, so that income is going away. Development fees going away. We're living off of sales tax and alcohol tax are our only revenue sources. So when we have no income, making these plans is really, don't know how far it will go. So things that I would like to see. Good job, Robert. I'm proud of you on that. Labor, building our staff up, empowering them with training and for the new technology so that we make their jobs easier, more efficient. All right, and that is, I've talked a lot about that, but it's important that we change the roles of our employees from hitting a button to send an email to things being done so that it lightens their load and they can do other things that the new generation, the new people that are coming are expecting more. They paid a lot of money for what they bought and they're wanting more. And that more is going to cost more. So a lot of these things, again, if we don't have income, the only real solution is to tax our property owners. And nobody likes that. So labor, empowering our labor, making sure we've investing in internships with our young people in our schools. Let these young people come in and work and help us and do some fill-in jobs and bring some new ideas in. A lot of times a young person can tell you how to run a computer better than an older individual. And so let's bring some new ideas and let's train some new people and empower them to be able to stay here and not have to leave when they graduate high school. So labor is very important. Facilities. Franklin Square is the center of it all. What our rights and ability to do in Franklin Square, and what is the will of the people. Our Parks and Recreation building is terrible, sorry. Our gym is terrible. Somebody wants to move, and they're trying to do something prosperous, positive, but we can't put a Band-Aid on these issues. We got to start saying, okay, we're in the big leagues now. I'm sorry, I'm not politically correct, but we're the big dogs. We're Kenny Bunkport, whatever. And we're going to have the facilities that are, so those areas, we own those areas, and we've got to redevelop them. And we've got people that want performing arts centers and all that. Let's direct our money and our interest into Franklin Square and how we're going to develop that cultural center of the town. So that means putting money into maybe expanding the gym into a performing center combo gym with Parks and Recreation. Use those areas that we're entitled to. And it's going to step on people's feet when you cut a tree down. But the tree's going to die, and if we don't do something, because that tree might have 20 more years, and we cripple Southport for a lifetime, I don't care about a tree that much. I'm sorry. Okay? It's about my children's future. Will they be able to stay here? So, shoreline stabilization, we've got $5 million. We might need to try to do something with it. Do I think we can stop the river? No. And it is not the ships. Traffic. We're overwhelmed, 20,000 people a day, 13,000 people going down Fodale Avenue. Why? Why? So what I want to talk about in traffic, and I've mentioned this to my fellow alderman and mayor, is you don't really know how things have changed in Southport if you don't look a little bit further out, how things have changed in the last 60 or 100 years. My example is Moore Street and Leonard. When Moore and Leonard meet, they're not meeting out there to go to ADM. That was the road to Wilmington. My father went to Wilmington on that road, but a military base came in, and they changed the whole road and how we got to Southport, and we survived. Things have changed. We lost railroads. We've lost businesses, things of that nature. So we have had great change, and if you've just got here in the last 5 years, you really can't see. Some of this change is good. It really is. So we might need to rethink some of our roads and how we direct our traffic. Putting a stoplight at Leonard and Howe, and sending people who have come to visit us a way to get out of town without turning around and going back out and doubling traffic. And so, and these are state issues, which we don't have to pay for. We called Representative Miller and Senator Rabin, and we work on them to get DOT to help us with this, as well as Moore Street and getting our ferry traffic off of Fodale, Stewart. That problem will never be fixed if we allow people through traffic and to ride through our neighborhoods. I cannot believe I'm saying it, but sometimes connectivity hurts us. It's 13,000 people riding down a road that they don't have to ride down, but they just do it because it's convenient and they're used to it. And so hard things for a local to say, we might need to change the route of some transportation. So I'll move on. Right away, if we, again, I learned a lot last night. If we restrict and tell people they can't do something with the right of way, then we need to be able to maintain the right of way. You can't have it both ways. You got to either have responsibility or give it away, type of thing. Connectivity. Thank you, Lo. But I am the Al Gore of connectivity of the parks. Let me just say that. I'm the first person that said we need to connect these parks because walking around Southport in the streets is no longer safe. And I have friends, family, people that enjoy that. And I think that that is probably one of the best things we could be working on is connecting, buying that property, getting the property, connecting our parks, highlighting the things that are open space and the things that the next 50 years we'll probably enjoy. So connectivity is good. Police station, I'm just jumping on. It's all about Franklin Square Park. You've got a substation. We had a fire station. There is a building in place that could be expanded on that's part of Franklin Square Park. It all comes back to how are we going to deal with that? So there is a place for the police station. And it's across the street from our old city hall, which hopefully we can get some kind of use of. Man, this is my 5th time in this meeting, and it's the 5th time I'll say it. We need sidewalks out to Walmart. And we just keep waiting for somebody to pay for it in a convenient way. I hear you, but I hadn't seen it, and they hadn't, So, it's just like the second bridge. It took a long time to come. It did, yeah. So, yeah, and it's all about money. We have to wait sometimes for money. So, I know that there's big money coming into the park that we're working on, that we're meeting at 12 o'clock. It's easy to get, I'm going to be honest with you, it's easier to get money for things like that than a pump station. There are money out there, state money. People are working to get some money for that. Let's let everybody do their thing, and we might need to fund some of it, but let's don't spend money that we can get real easy over here and take our money and spend it on hard assets that nobody wants to give us 70-20 match. So, thank you.
Thank
Alderman
you.
Lay.
Mr. Light?
Hello. You know, we have become, over the years, a destination. Everybody wants to come to Southport. Everybody shows up in Southport. I think they're all here every day. You look at the traffic coming down 211, 87, 133, everyone's here. They're all using our infrastructure. And who's paying for that infrastructure? The people that in our tax base. And that's it. So, how do we generate more income? Where's the money coming from? Grants or whatever? I've changed the way you may have to go to paid parking. Well, people will scream about that. But, how do we generate income? We've got a lot of things to do as far as our infrastructure. The courthouse, Franklin Square. It would be nice if we had a space of our own, somewhere that we could call home, so we could have our meetings at the same place as opposed to trying to figure out where we're going from time to time. It keeps me confused. Our people, our staff are our most important asset. They have got to have the knowledge, skills, and abilities to do things. Things are changing. We need to make sure that they've got the skill sets that they need to do that job. We need to make sure that we do some studies on how we compensate those people so that they will stay here. We need to make sure that we can keep people more than a couple of years. We need to make sure every time that you lose an employee, you start here, and it takes a period of time to get them to here. And all that period of time, you lose in productivity. I don't care how fast they get there. They're coming with skill sets, but then we got to Southportize them. So that takes a period of time. So the more skill sets they have, the more they can do for us. We are a tourist economy right now as far as the jobs that we have available. There are no what I would call high-paying jobs in the area. So for you to live in Southport, it takes a fairly healthy salary or fairly healthy amount of money, or your investments have had to do well. You know, what can we do to get people that do the jobs in Southport to live in Southport? Now that's tough. You know, we've talked about a lot of things here, and a lot of things. I'm not going to go back over and over and over again because the greenways, there's stabilization of assured, the piers, all the attractions that we have in town. The tourists come in. They take up a lot of parking spaces. At the same time, they bring in money to our restaurants, to our all the businesses we have in town. So we got to figure out a way to get people in and out of town. Where do they park? You know, if I sit out here and look at the traffic coming down 211, it's a never-ending stream. I'm beginning to think that some people just make a circle. You know, where are they coming from? Where are they going? There are only so many people that can come across the ferry, only so many people that can dump off the Bald Head ferries. So where are all these cars coming from? Where are they going? What have they been? Now, I was at Walmart one day, and there's a couple standing there taking a picture of themselves in front of Walmart. And I'm going, what in the... And the guy says, we're documenting our vacation. Now, you're taking a picture of yourself in front of Walmart? We are one heck of a destination if the Walmart in Southport is one of the highlights of your trip. But, yeah. Yeah. So, again, there's so many things that our buildings are in bad shape. The gym, City Hall, where all our people are located now. That place is bursting. We need somewhere for the police department to go. And you need to take a look at all these things and take a look at, like we said, what can we do right now? What can we do in the midterm? What can we do long term? How do we project it out and get some logical way to say, okay, we can fund these things over a period of time? Now, everybody's project, they want it done right now. I don't blame them. But, you know, we only have so much income. How do we spread it out? How do we start looking for grants that are out there? What money is out there that we can get to come in and help fill our coffers? Because we sure don't want to put ourselves in a position where we have to raise taxes. They'll run you out of town if you try to do that. So again, a lot of things. Everybody here has covered and hit on a lot of things that are absolutely important that we've got to have. Now, how are we going to do it? What time frame? How are we going to pay for it?
Something, I didn't know that this was the kind of thing that we would necessarily be talking about, but we've all said in one way or another the same thing. We need a better or an additional source of revenue. And it is assumed that by many people that the visitors who come here and spend money, that the money, the sales taxes from that all come to us. We just get a sliver of that. By state law, the way that's set up, I don't know exactly what that percentage is, but it's low, and I don't see a whole lot of opportunity or likelihood that that's going to change anytime soon. We have poor municipalities in this county that sales taxes out of Southport are helping to support, and of course helping to support the county and the state. So an option for us, which is, we haven't been able to manage it yet, but is to have a municipal option sales tax, which we've talked about before. We can't just do that. We have to have the permission of the legislature to put that on a referendum, as a matter of fact, and ask people if they are willing to pay an additional penny or two when they buy a drink, when they buy a meal. And actually, we're even limited by how we can use that, but that's a kind of an elastic term. You know, it has to go toward tourism costs. Well, you know, tourism costs, we can put a whole lot of things in that tent. But I think it's mandatory for us that we start the campaign with our legislators to please let us do this. I can't imagine that they're going to let us do it for this coming election. In fact, I don't think that that's something they can do in this abbreviated session. So, but for the following year, I guess this comes into the median goals, we need to make this a priority. We've got to get a bigger share of the sales tax.
Just a little enhancement on what you just said. I'm going to piggyback on something that Alderman Spencer has been pounding the drum on for quite some time, and that is the sales tax. And while in theory, the way this county divides it up by population would help the more depressed, economically depressed areas, and that's why it was originally set up that way. But there's a community that's about 3.5 miles from here that has maybe 4 cash registers in it in the entire place that gets twice as much money as we do. And they're not economically depressed. And we create the funds that goes 3.5 miles north of us to fund whatever they're going to fund. So there is the opportunity to explore different ways through Raleigh and that's a long-range plan because you're going to have the first 2 years you get rebuffed, no matter what you do, to beat that drum, to see if there's different ways to do that. Because nothing that we've talked about so far can be done unless we've got the dollars to do it. Yes, sir?
We love our neighbors.
A question, isn't it up to the county how after the state has taken its share, then the county has two possible options for how they're going to divvy things up? And it certainly doesn't seem fair to Southport. It's not by population. I think it's by the amount of commercial activity. And
So,
say again?
it is per capita?
Boy, that
or-
really
or
does
a-
hurt us, doesn't
So
it?
it is either per capita, which is our population, which we've had for many generations say, no, don't do in Southport, don't do in Southport. So now we're 3,800 in 160,000 county. 3,800 people. In a county where we were the county seat, we're now 3,800 people out of 160,000, and we get that proration of money. And if we try to do the ad valorem, well, we're competing with our neighbors. And let me just say, our neighbors that get twice the amount of money, they got a gate around their community. They have a gate around their community, and they still get the money. I'm not saying, but I'm putting it out there. Sharing Southport with everyone is not always a good idea. Let's lease these parking. Someone mentioned that they didn't want to leave home because church was happening on Sunday or whatever. I know it wasn't you. But, and there are people that talk about during the summer how they're scared to go to the store because they come back and they don't have a parking spot. Well, let's lease the place, let's lease our right-of-ways to them every year and give them their private stickered parking. I'm going to reference Washington, D.C. I know when you go to Washington, D.C. on those side roads, you don't park unless you've got a sticker. And there's money generated from those things. And we say, yes, you can come to Southport, but don't go in our neighborhoods and wear out our neighbors. Let's stand up for the neighbors. They've got the money to pay for it. When they're buying $1 million home, they can pay a few $1,000s a year to guarantee nobody parks in that front. And I'd rather take their money and let them have their peace and solitude than serve. Because again, we can't put a gate around it, but we can say we care more about our residents than your short-term moment in front of Walmart. Who can stand up and say that? I care more about my hometown than I do who comes here.
Ann, do you have a solution for us?
Oh, I absolutely do. I go to Walmart and Walgreens on House Street probably 15 times a week. So I understand exactly what you're saying. And yes, it's either going to be ad valorem or population. So you'll get a fight from the county, and if you don't get a fight from the county, you'll get a fight from the other towns in the county.
That's true only because that's the way it is right now. There could be other options. I mean, in other words, the state can change the law so there's more than just those two options. And that, I think, is one of the things that Mark has been talking about. Not necessarily that we have, or he or I or anybody else has a definitive, here it is right on this piece of paper. But there has to be other ways of looking at other states and how they do their sales tax and how do we want to do that. So I would suggest that the first part of that would be an exploration of how other people do it, and then start the 5-year march to Raleigh to figure out if we could do it another way. Because it's not going to happen overnight because it's new.
It's a bit irritating to watch the money that is generated in our town going somewhere else. I mean, I remember a couple years ago, got a relative that has a place at Wrightsville Beach, and they were screaming about the same thing. All that money going in there, it was going to fund other little communities, in this case, New Hanover County. And we've got the same situation here. You know, it goes out. We are, in my opinion, we're the garden spot of Brunswick County. A lot of people come to see us. They make a day trip here. Money is spent here. And that money doesn't stay here. It goes out the door to fund somewhere else. In my mind, it's not fair, but there's nothing I can do about that. But it is a bit galling that, money that's generated here goes out. So if that money could stay here, it would sure help us do a lot of the things that we need to do. And right now, the way it's set up, that's not happening.
Just going to mention that since I've been here working, I have never seen a state that hampers their municipalities like North Carolina. And you have got to ban with the other towns across the state, whether it's the league or something, to say enough is enough. I mean, every other state that I've worked in, 3 other states, the municipalities have options and ways to raise funds that you go to referendum. I mean, it's because it's the voters' right to decide whether they want to do it. But this is crazy here, where they just clamp down and municipalities can't breathe. And, I was going to bring this up after, and Mark, you've mentioned it. You're going to see, when you see the 5-year CIP that Bob and all of us have put together, you're going to see it on March 4th when Tom Z gives you the roads. You cannot pay for this by a tax dollar. You can't. Your buildings are going to go down the tubes, your roads. It is impossible. One of the things I was shocked about when I was applying and researching this town, you don't even have a bond rating. Bonding is a way you can do this, and you don't even have a bond rating. How in God's name are you going to keep up all these buildings and all the roads? And you have to start somewhere. And maybe it's a philosophy, well, we're not going to bond, but geez, Louise, I don't know how else you're going to do it. And you're going to see it because we're going to show you the proof of it. There's no way there's going to be that much grant money.
Grants versus revenue. I'm friends with some different legislators, and they talk about just let me get the money for you. Let me work on this. Let me do that. that's a one-shot deal. We need to build a long-term, stable business plan. I keep teaching my kids, you can talk about all these great ideas, but start writing it down and make a business plan. We need a business plan that works every year, not just, can you get me this? Because unfortunately, they might lose their office. God forbid they pass. And then where are we going to get our money from? If we are on the bottle of the politician, I'm not going to call it by what it is, and we don't take care of ourselves and build a plan of revenue, we're just going to be beggars. Grants are great, but revenue long-term plan is what we need.
Alderman Davis.
To follow up on what Bonnie said about the state's disempowerment of municipalities. It started close to 30 years ago, and it has been like a constant erosion. I mean, we had the horrible situation just this past year of the state's effort to undermine most of our important zoning. And do you know what those SOBs did toward the end? I missed this, but I've only become recently aware of it. They passed a law that municipalities cannot ban plastic bags or single-use plastic containers. What the hell?
Don't say that in his car. The car will drive to hell.
I thought I was risque.
The ball is in your court, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your input. What a great list we have. List. And just so you know, coming from the largest city in the state and working for 20-some years in the budget office in that city, the same discussion about the legislature happens there as it does here. And I've always said when I'm working in my small towns in my area, I know it sounds weird that I am working came from Charlotte and I'm helping you with a $100,000 budget. It's just the number of zeros. And the issues are the same. And it's how well you can generate money at the local government. And I applaud you for that. You're on target. In my career of responding to the way the legislature reacts or treats, if you want to use the bad word, treats municipalities, I hope that you're able to affect change. It's going to be a hard battle, but you know that, and it's so self-evident that the will of other areas of the state outweigh the areas of places like tourism destinations and population centers and that sort of thing. So I applaud you for your vision, and your list is so good. I have to tell you, Bonnie, I will say, as again, putting on my budget office hat, it is so refreshing to go into a budget discussion and hear the board talk about visioning and not percent increase in budgets and so forth. I was prepared to talk about, do we need to bring in some CPI, Consumer Price Index, into our discussion? Mayor, you talked a little bit about the performance indicators in your opening list. It is so refreshing to hear this perspective, and it is a daunting list, but I think it's great, and I appreciate your vision. Thank you. One of the ways that I had thought we would proceed with with the results of what you just did, was to prepare a consolidated list on the over on the paper. I'm having word troubles this morning. There is a lot of commonality already in your lists, so I'm not sure that we need to have a culling of this list because of the overlap, but I guess I would say let's just reaffirm priorities and go forward from that. So what I'd like to do is to get a consolidated list of the items that each of you have enumerated. And then let's go through and try to put some parameters around it with time frame. And also, maybe after we do the time frame, perhaps, Bonnie, can you tell me about any committees that exist that you would possibly send some of these items to? Is there any kind of thing like that that would apply?
I mean, for them to give some input into timelines, is that what you mean?
Yeah, like the committees, are there committees
There's
that?
Park and Recreation Committee, they
Okay.
would take a look at the Park and Rec. You know, anything that's planning oriented would go to planning, you know, those kinds of
Okay.
things.
So those are standing committees?
Correct,
Okay,
correct.
all right. Okay. I'm going to go back to the start of the list, and I'm going to try to make sure that I get those that are duplicates eliminated, but we'll double check myself, okay? So the mayor started out with discretionary funds. I wouldn't put that as an item. I would put Parks and Rec. Don't split the two. Consolidate Park and Rec. Functional consolidation is a word that functional consolidation. When I say functional consolidation, what I mean is that you take advantage of the initiatives that already exist within the two parties that you're combining or consolidating. And through that, you're going to provide some efficiencies.
I must have misled you then.
Oh.
We have a Parks and Recreation Department. There's been a call by some citizens to split it into parks and then recreation. And so what I was saying is that I'm against splitting them, and I want to keep them together because I think there are efficiencies to do that.
Okay.
A lot of the things that recreation does relies on the parks, and so it's easier to have one person over the top of both.
Okay.
What we don't have necessarily is a skill set internally right now to do I'm going to use probably the wrong term, the landscaping part of it, the upkeep of the parks so the parks stay nice.
I got that. Okay.
Okay.
Just take functional consolidation off of there. Thank you. Possibly contracting a third party for designing a park and rec plan. Third party plan. But for the specific issue of landscaping and
Except as a long-term master plan, parks, buildings, everything, that was adopted last year, year before? Last year. So that's in place, it's implementing it.
the disadvantages of not having an internal staff person being your facilitator. Okay, the old courthouse. Remediation, reuse. And what I heard from, I believe I heard from the rest of you, is that is not a question mark at the end of those two words. You're not looking for some alternative, such as tearing down. Okay, so. Shoreline restoration. You mentioned the $5 million grant from the state. What I heard was that's not the ARP money, correct? Okay. And what the actual thing that we would do with the shoreline restoration as a budget item or a long-term plan, is there a shoreline restoration plan?
Right now, we have a contractor working on that. So I think what the board
Okay.
is saying, they really want to see as soon as possible, what does 5 million buy us, because it's got to go done at 26. And also, they know it's going to cost more than 5 million to do the actual project. So what is that other additional amount of money?
So the current grant runs through FY '26 or December '26?
Of 2026.
Okay.
Must be spent.
Which means that we're going into the budget cycle of one of two that is left.
Correct.
And so
Yep.
tempo on the part of developing the plan is something that's been challenging.
Yep. Okay. Pardon?
Several plans, but prices outrun the plan every time.
Some history, and every time they've done a plan, it goes on a shelf. Then the topic comes back up 3-4 years later, but guess what? You got to start all over again because the shoreline's changed. So it's been very frustrating, I know, for elected officials, for the people who utilize that area. Let's get it done once and for all.
Okay. The next item was alleyways. I heard two things related to encroachment would be overgrowth and traffic, whether it's cars, golf carts, pedestrians, bicycles. So traffic, I guess, would be a good word, I hope.
I think, and Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, the width of the alleyways and stuff would not allow for much vehicle use unless we allowed people to use the alleyways to enter their garages, which means we would basically be forfeiting it to some other use than what their original use was. Because we had that discussion last night, and I'm still trying to figure out how we allegedly approved a plan to have people enter their garage from the alleyways.
Okay. Fifth on your list was road paving. Cost per linear foot, mile, whatever metric you want to use. Have you had an independent assessment of your roads and a prioritization developed?
No, we're recommending it. Tom Z is going to be doing the presentation March 4th to the board, and that is one of our recommendations. You have to have an inventory. And no, I don't know if they've ever had an inventory. Thomas Stanley, have you ever done an inventory, a road inventory?
We did a basic road inventory several years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago, basically on a scale of 1 to 10.
But it was done in-house?
It was done in-house. We've never done an official road inventory, or even priority type.
Okay, so, no.
That's one of the things that goes back to your state shared revenues as well, and the state street aid and Powell bill. When it was designed back in, I believe it was in the mid-'70s, it was keeping up with not keeping up with, but had a reasonable budget expectation.
It's like $300,000.
Yes,
It's
I
nothing.
know.
We
Yeah.
can't do a driveway. Yeah, so it's
Yeah,
it's
the
it's virtually
the
useless.
tax that comes to you when they first started the program had a reasonable application over a long-term plan of how you would do, say, pave the road once every 20 years or whatever you adopt. And now it costs $1 million or more a mile to pave a road. And so, again, this goes back to your state shared revenues. RPO, Greenway, the National Greenway, Coastline. Start saving or find matching funds. Sales tax split. I'm not going to go in order because I shuffled my pages. Mr. Lay had invest in people, skills, training, compensation, recruitment and retention. Okay. Also, infrastructure, and they was talking about the hardscape of the buildings, courthouse, Franklin Square, Town Hall, as examples. So I put that under city-owned facilities. Yes. And here comes the question. Is there or has there been a study of space needs for the town?
Hall, yes, and the police station for a new police station, yes. And
Okay.
all the other buildings, no.
Okay. Okay, so I guess one of the things that we would need to look for city-owned facilities is a comprehensive space needs study. And that's a question mark. I'm not going to make any assumptions without y'all agreeing to it. Okay, maybe another page. Mr. Lane, you had highlighted the gym, City Hall, and Police Department separately from the infrastructure comments. Is it okay for me to put those two together? Okay. Okay. Then the last one on his list was tourism, and what are we going to do about parking, basically? People coming into town, whether their destination is here or going back home. Is that a good? Yep. Let's expand that to one way or overnight. Overnight versus transit. Okay. Is tourism paying the bills? Is there an alternative revenue source related to tourism? So tourism, alternative revenue source, or additional? Yes, please. Yeah, I think so.
keep reiterating this. We have to change our intention to not even motivate ourselves by the needs of the tourist. They will still come and invade us whether we like them or not. So what I'm looking at is mentally return on investment. If we spend $1 million or $10 million to keep our roads up, and we only get $11 million back, versus our neighbors do nothing and they get twice as much, the mentality of invite the happiest seaside village is damaged us. We're too big for our britches, as far as like my father would say. We're way out in front of our skis to where we don't have to take care of these people. So it is truly the sentiment to keep satisfying the tourist. And a lot of the people I heard from last night were worried more about their own front yard than satisfying the tourist. So break this cycle of tourism is going to save our lives. Maybe I'm wrong, but I've got to say it.
Besides what we've already put up regarding staff recruitment and retention strategies, you also had the idea of some internships that would help with fill-in of vacancies and create new ideas.
My son volunteers. The schools allow them to be out every other Friday, and they are told to go volunteer, and they volunteer at the Maritime Museum and things of that nature. So it's a great opportunity to give that opportunity to get experience in these different fields, and to maybe see a future in working for the city and things of that nature.
So we could
There's
add to internships, we could add, investigate partnering with the school system.
And I don't know that we take enough advantage of the opportunity to hire interns during the summertime, which is longer than every other Friday, and which, if we can meld them into Parks and Rec and other things that we do around here, to have them, we actually screen them, we hire them. Just because you sign up doesn't mean you get picked. And we let them have authority and learn how to do things and act. It does two things. It helps us and it helps them.
And builds
Where's
community.
the other one? Okay. Could we pull them out, if you don't mind pulling them apart, because I'm trying not to duplicate.
Just so you know, your timing's perfect, because I'm going to be putting in the budget the opportunity to work through the league, actually, for an intern. I don't think Southport's ever had that before, and it's a great opportunity at a reduced price. Somebody who's really interested in local government, and so I'm going to be putting that in the budget for some projects.
Are you talking about the LEAD program? Okay. And I'll just a personal note on that. The LEAD program started probably less than 5 years ago, and it took a while to get some legs, but I'm really starting to see some incredible work coming from that program. I have a small town who had no written policies. It doesn't matter if it was a personnel policy or a it was Bonnie when she was in high school. Yeah, no, and that was the project they gave to the lead intern, and she's going gangbusters with the small town. It's so great, and she's sending me documents to proof and comment on, and I'm just tickled with it. So I highly recommend that program. Rethink our roads on traffic. I don't think we've got any more space over there on the traffic, such as Rerouting. Just put, I guess you go ahead and do a separate one. Probably big enough to keep it separate, yeah. Traffic plan. Rerouting, limit cut-through traffic, connectivity of parks. Mr. Spencer, I wrote down the maintenance or give up all of the right-of-way, maintain them or give them up. And I wrote down police, and I think that must have been enforce whatever rules on the right-of-way. Station. Okay. So infrastructure, city-owned infrastructure.
So it sounds to me like you do want to pursue the police station, and the reason I'm bringing this up is there's been a rumor floating around that some of the elected officials want to have the sheriff's office take over the police department, and it's entrenched into the staff. So I want to make sure that is not a true comment, and we are moving ahead, Chief, and going to build you a police station.
We are going to have an autonomous police force, like Ms. Mosteller said, or I'll be leaving town. People will probably want to do that, but
Some of his staff has gone to him, and I went, oh, we have to stop this now, because I do not need staff leaving when we've got such a great force right now. So thank you all for reassuring all of us.
All in favor? Yeah. I think we have a majority or even a unanimous vote.
I'll officially say that it's unanimous.
Right-of-ways. Yes, we need to add it. Thank you. The next one is sidewalks to Walmart and everywhere else. Another comment from the large city to our west. One of the fortunate things about being in a large city and the incredible building that was going on is that we were able to build sidewalks within the development world. And the luxury that we had when that was possible to build sidewalks on both sides of the road as opposed to just getting a sidewalk out there. So just one of the things that was limited by land development rules and regulations. Okay, park money is available. Go for it. I send park grants. Yes. Part F. I see so many offers for Part F grant money come across the emails, and sometimes I resend out those things just to reaffirm that it's not just a mantra from the Park and Rec folks, that they really are trying to get people to apply for more. There's other money out there too. Park grants, it doesn't have to be state money. I worked with a small town that got money from Duke Energy because they were a customer of Duke Energy, and it was for, up to like $50,000. And that's a nice little piece of money for a small spot. So anybody besides not only Part F money.
Heather, our Parks and Rec Director, is queen of the grant writing. She's gotten us, I don't know how much money, but she continues to do that.
Bonnie mentioned my intro, my education from the MPA program at UNC Charlotte, but she didn't mention my undergrad, and that was in accounting from UNC Chapel Hill. And Ms. Mostetler mentioned the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award to pursue, and I just about swooned. Pursue Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. Yeah. Yeah. There's
Vance's goals list.
there's so many things wrapped up in that, and it crosses everything. And one of the minute parts of that is performance measurements. And those performance targets and things that you're going to be writing as demonstration of the success of your program and how you spend your money. And you'll see performance targets that pop out on these topics all over, and that's one of my passions. KPIs, yes. Key performance indicators. Okay. You mentioned the user fees going into a separate fund and the possibilities that would derive from that, whether it's using the money for anything new, or is there anything that, truthfully, can we charge to that from what we're already doing? Bonnie mentioned to me in our prep work that the pay study is coming up, presentation is coming up next week. Is that correct? So the impact of that, so recruitment and retention, I think we've got that, yeah. Training, same thing. Relocate PD, yacht basin dredging. Oak Island would like the product of that, if you would like to bring it over to us, please.
Good deal on it.
Give us your share of the sales tax.
I'll refer you to my earlier comment of how many times I come to Walmart and Walgreens a week. Oh, gosh. Okay, again, shoreline restoration, the Olson report. Okay. All right. Sidewalks, we wrote sidewalks. We need to have an evaluation of condition and expansion. Is that right? Existing versus more. I'm going to, two of the items in the next topic you mentioned, I'm going to place under the traffic study or traffic topic, and that was the traffic calming devices and considering a transportation committee. I think the third thing that you had under policies, the town branding and signage. Does that sound okay? Uniform town branding and signage. We have mentioned employees more than once, and you specifically mentioned the planning vacancies that we need to concentrate on. And also, again, traffic study or the entry corridor overlay, overlay district, that possibly could be part of that. Yeah. Yes. Now, we're going to come back around to these lists and put a little bit of meat to them, because that's a nice concept, but what does that mean for a budget discussion, okay? So are we going to dedicate some funding for whatever that entails, whether it's in-house or contract? That discussion will, hopefully, some parts of that will come next when we're talking about short-term, intermediate. The question about stormwater, does the stormwater plan allow for the town to amend it based on state regulations? One of the things that we did in Charlotte when I was there was the impervious surface survey. And I could go on and on and on about that. One of the things, who has to pay it, who doesn't have to pay it. We found out in Charlotte very disappointedly that state doesn't have to pay their impervious surface fees, or the feds. That was, there's a lot of federal and state property in Charlotte. Okay. Mr. Carroll brought up the sewer merger, the water sewer merger. That's correct, right? What's going to happen with the positions expenditure, the expense of people that don't go away? And I'm using that as a coverall statement for the things that go with, whether it's going to the electric fund, general fund, who knows what fund. We talked about the infrastructure, the city-owned facilities, and Mr. Carroll brought up asset maintenance for City Hall and courthouse. I think that city-owned facilities comprehensive study, would you agree that that could be combined into that, Mr. Carroll? You mentioned the inclusive park. Is that something that's underway? Okay. Do I make that out to the town of Oak Island? Okay. The concept of monetizing tourism. And I think that's a really good title for it. As long as you don't include me. I'm kidding. And I had that written down as a medium to long term, but we'll go in and put that in a minute. Okay. Ms. Davis had the storm drainage. Storm water, where's the storm water? Okay. Can we amend impervious surface drainage plans? So I'm going to... Yes. You wanted more pervious surface. Okay. One of the things that I work on, that I'm working on with another community, a group of towns, is maybe a regionalized water sewer system. And there's not one that the county would come in and be able to take over in this case. And we had a presentation from School of Government just a couple of weeks ago, and I learned that when, if a community created a water and sewer authority, that they have the general statute ability to create a stormwater fee. So one thing I would just throw out there, and I don't know the answer to this, but in the research that you do with your consolidation study, ask the question if they are going to be the ones that would have the authority for stormwater fee if they take over your water and sewer. I doubt it. I think it has to do with the authority versus county government and all of that. But when I was watching the presentation, that grabbed me for your discussion today. The option of eminent domain being used in certain areas, for example, the yacht basin, for parking issues, which I guess could come under city-owned facilities if it went that way. I'm not sure if there is a way to put this into the short-term budget discussion, but we'll have it on the medium and long-term, and that's preserve the river vista, which is your CAMA goals, I believe, is what she mentioned. We mentioned city-owned facilities, explore electric vehicle plug-ins and other, what are they called? Alternative, hybrid alternative fuel vehicles. That's not what I wrote down. Bonnie did not mention the years in which I spent my term in Charlotte. I started in Charlotte in 1985. And one of the first projects I worked on when I got to the budget office in '89 was exploring the use of electric vehicles for the city of Charlotte. 1989. We partnered with Rock Hill Community College, who had a program for students there. And I'm not going to tell you how many times that topic came back up in my 26 years there, but I laugh every time I see an agenda item somewhere for an electric vehicle, and I think about the one in 1986. We partnered with them, with the community college, and we ran, I think it was a pilot program with 3 vehicles, and as soon as they had to send the batteries back, as you can imagine, back then they were kind of heavy and didn't last very long. As soon as they needed to go back to California to be replaced, we no longer had electric vehicles in Charlotte. But we did have garbage trucks that ran on, yes, propane, whatever it was. And they still have those. They still have buses as well. Does it pay for itself? I don't know. But they have them.
We turned down a free, autonomous shuttle that would have been paid for free from the Department of Transportation. We said, no, we don't want it.
I heard about that.
It's quite interesting that they want to give us something innovative, and we say, no, we don't want it.
Okay, we've mentioned the Greenway linking the parks, I believe. Did I get that up there? Okay, good. All right. Bonnie threw in her 5 or 6 cent sales tax discussion for disempowerment of municipalities. We talked about the 5-year CIP that will be coming with your budget document, I understand, this year. That defining an alternative revenue source will have to be involved in that conversation. So I think I've captured everything. As long as we say we're dissatisfied with our legislature in distribution of municipal power in what do we call it, self-determination.
Remarkably well by our legislator. This past year, Brunswick County alone got $200 million from the state. $35 million was given to the county, but for a city project, this city's project. So I'm not throwing the legislature under the bus here.
No.
What Mark is talking about, he makes a very good point, and the others have made a good point, is that we've been surviving on those distributions because we don't have a revenue stream of our own. So trying to figure out a revenue stream as opposed to our version of a legislative proposal, which is, here's a list of all the things we want, and here's all the money we would like to have every year. We need to figure out how we balance that out further.
Yeah.
I think that's what we were
You
trying
need
to
a
get to.
recurring source of revenue versus one-time
Yes, it is. we
presence
can't
from
be-
the state.
We're lucky to have leaders who are really critical in the legislature
Yes.
and are able to bring the pork barrel home. It's a dirty word, but it's the truth. But we can't depend on that.
Not
and
not in your long-term planning. no.
Because really, we have not had the resources to pay these bills ever. We've been over our heads, again, ahead of our skis, whatever you want to put it. We can't catch up with what has happened. So a plan where we decide how to spend our money rather than asking for money.
Agree.
You know, it may be just something, this is long-term dealing with the state, long-term, but if you could get the municipalities together and ask for them to form some kind of even committee to look at these problems. We did it in Connecticut. We harassed them so long, so many years. They finally sat us down with state representatives, and they could listen to us and hear what our issues are. And actually, it opened up their eyes, but it isn't going to happen overnight. But if you could even get them to just form that, if you could just work with the other municipalities to say, look, you need to listen to us and hear what we're all going through, the Charlottes to the Southports, I think that would be a great first start.
Well,
There's a chance of at least trying to engage that. It'll take the entire board's ideas of how to do that with the 19 municipal mayors of Brunswick County. But they're not even united on almost anything. So to give you an example of how they're not united, recently there's been the talk about raising the insurance rates like gazillion%. And they asked all 19 mayors to sign a petition to do that, against that. And only 13 signed it. So 6 of them decided they weren't even going to get involved in that. The same thing happened to some degree, but we weren't fully engaged at, so I can't tell you the exact percentage here. But this past legislative session, when we thought we were going to lose a whole bunch of home rule, there was not a united front of the 19 mayors to do anything on that. So we can get probably 2/3 of them, but it won't be all 19. But it's a place to start.
I have to speak up with a personal commercial here, or professional commercial, I guess I should say. For the league, we are your voice at the legislature, as our motto says, working as one, advancing all. And we have the goal-setting sessions are every 2 years to match up with the sessions, the long session. And I encourage you to go as a body to these meetings and represent your town early and often. The number one goal that I know in recent memory is explore alternative revenue sources for the town's control, underneath town's control. So please use us. We have, of course, we have the lobbyists that work on behalf of all towns, and lawyers, lobbyists, research, all the research that you can possibly imagine. We have those resources there, and I encourage you to explore it. 116 years and counting, we've been working for the group. That's the end of the commercial. Please return to your normal programming.
Get an amen on this. So I really believe the things that I've learned as I've been an alderman is we can't do all our business here. We have to attend the League of Municipalities functions. We need to have our presence known. We need to run for board positions. Without activity and interaction with these inland groups, we will get nothing. So we cannot live in a bubble. We have to get in the car and go and take part in these League of Municipalities things. And you are our lobbyist, and it's already paid for, and she is very well qualified. I met her. So we need to participate more with the League of Municipalities in the Raleigh arena.
So up under discretionary funding, that would be a sizable donation to the League of Municipalities. Oh, I'm sorry. That's me. I know. I'm sorry. Okay. Anybody ready to start putting some sort of parentheses around these things, or arms around them? I guess is better than a parentheses. Sir.
One thing onto this list, I know it's a lot, but I want a small amount of funding for our summer programs for Parks and Recreation. We've got a program going where people come in the summertime and help us. So there'll be a small funding attribute here to buy some technology and to fund maybe some of those interns to help along on our summer programs. So it will probably, I would ask for like a $10,000 around that kind of appropriation on this. So it might not get votes today, but it will be talked about. Okay?
Well, one of the outcomes of this is going to be a list for the manager to explore, and then bring back to you in your budget discussions, and then that's when you would raise your hands on a vote of yay or nay on the money. She'll be working with the finance officer on how you'd pay for it, and who would get it, and all those kinds of things. So I think that's entirely appropriate for this list. Okay. What I'm going to do, I believe, is with a show of hands, whether or not you want these ideas to go forward as a group, as a group of people, not as a group of items, by saying, if we get, right now we have, she's here, okay. we have 5 commissioners here and the mayor. Why don't we see if we can get 3 yes votes on each of them? And if we don't get 3, you certainly can still bring it up later. But this will be what the manager can use as an outline for what she brings back to you in the draft budget. Does that
Well,
sound like okay?
I only caution that words matter, and votes during a workshop are not allowed.
Okay.
So we can reach consensus by nods of heads or some other fashion, but we can't take a technical vote on anything. So the manner in which
Sure.
we reach consensus might be a nod of a head, yes or no, but it's not necessarily a vote mandating that we go forward.
Well, I just so happen to have some consensus building tools here. So I'm going to ask each of you to take one color. I was ready for that. And your colored name will be anonymous, Mr. Spencer. And I'm going to let you get up and stretch your legs, and I want you to put a 1, 2, and 3 next to your top 3, and then let's say yes next to whether you want it to go forward for a study, to have more information. Does that work with y'all? Okay, so you're going to put a 1, 2, 3 next to 3 number ones, basically, and then yes, and you can do a tally. You can do the tally, what do you call it, tick marks for 2 more. And I'm good at math, so don't try to fool me. 1, 2, 3 on the ones that are your top 3 priorities, and go to 4 and 5 with tick marks on whether you want them to go forward. Okay, good. the use of a tick mark would just say it's fourth and fifth, but I don't have a priority on it. Okay, folks, thanks for participating in our elementary education exercise. It was fun, wasn't it? You got up, moved your legs a little bit. Okay. And the result of that is I think we have some working orders for your city manager. With your approval, we will take these lists and incorporate them into a priority based on your ratings. And it's pretty even, well, based on just a quick glance of where the major priorities are. And then there's other smatterings of, 1 and 2 different marks. So the list itself is in its entirety going to the manager with your priorities marked. So she has something that says short term, somewhat medium, and long-term that she will pass along to the new manager to become, they can get done in their first 30 days. I'm sure you can ask them to do that in the interview process. So, all of you, if you will just indicate that you are okay with that process, and we'll have a document back to you pretty soon.
To stay away from the forbidden land.
Okay.
The fact that we all got up and wrote on it,
Uh-huh.
I think acknowledges that we agree with this process. Would that be okay? I'm
Okay.
just trying to stay away from the V word.
Sure, sure.
And also, I just wanted you to know, like, the planning staff has already been funded. It's in this year's, the current budget, so just some things like that.
But recruitment and retention may require something other than that.
The problem is, where do you put them? We have no space, which goes into, where do we put them? We have no space, and so that brings us into the other, type of. I just want to bring up, there are some department heads here, not all, but if there's anything that they want to chime in that we have forgotten, I will say Chief Drew is at a conference, so the fire chief could not be here, and I do know that he has one concern, and that is that he is not sure how long that fire fee can go without increased city funding with the staffing he has right now. So I want to at least make that pitch for him. He's going to do his best not to have to ask for more city funding, but at some point, if the fire fees are not increased, which they haven't been in a while, that city's going to have to put in more funds in order to make the fire department whole. Chief Coring, are we missing anything?
Well, we did.
No, I think you guys have covered it. So the police department, of course, I've been before you, all of you already, the space that the manager's talking about. We are at a critical need for space. You've heard we have very little space that we're in now, and retention and recruitment and officer wellness is something you'll hear us talking about in the next couple of weeks. So from my viewpoint right now, I think I'm hearing, good things, and certainly the reassurance about the rumor, I appreciate that being brought to your attention, because that has been lingering for about 3 weeks now. So I've been talking with the manager, so I'm glad she brought that before all of you. So we appreciate that. So,
Mr. Stanley, you have anything? And since this is Lance's first municipal budget, anything you want to ask or get more clarification on, or?
Thank you. No, I'm really encouraged by the vision and the list up there that I see. But being the finance officer, obviously it takes money to make the world go round, and there's a lot of money up there on that list. So, finding long-term, and actually we need to think in terms of annual operating sort of budgets, and then longer term. Our capital budgets and our operating budgets need to be broken down and be segregated and looked at in that way, because the capital budget is going to involve a lot of long-term financing that we're going to have to come up with. The operating budget is mostly going to be your tax revenues that come in on an annual basis, plus whatever supplemental revenues we get. But I think as we move forward, we're accustomed as a city of looking at one budget that has a bunch of lines in it that say capital. We really need to break those down and look at them separately, and I think that'll help. This will help frame that conversation. So, thank you.
Dory, anything? You're going to be the one who's going to be leading this budget, so that's the only way she can learn. So I'm putting her in the hot seat.
Yeah, putting me on the hot seat.
Wow.
I know.
Karen, did you have a question for? Oh, okay. Okay.
I was just going to express from development services, planning services, filling those positions is going to be critical. That's all I had to say about that.
Just wondered if we could talk about a few of these. One of the things that Rich talked about, Parks and Rec, and structuring that. And I brought this up before, that in the Parks and Recs plan, which I think is part of the conversation, is breaking out, not necessarily having a number 2 person. I mean, I think they can have that in their structure. That's not, but to actually have a maintenance component that's under Parks and Rec, that's like 2 people or whatever, so that their whole focus is parks, and they is Heather still here? No. Anyway, about 10 years or so ago, they had that. It had always been that way, that they had maintenance people as part of the Parks and Recs department. And then there was a decision made that moved them to Public Works, where then it becomes a work order thing, and they're not dedicated, individuals are not dedicated just to the parks, and they don't have that plan, which I think might have accounted for some maintenance issues, long-term sliding through the cracks, for lack of a better way to say it. But the Parks and Recs plan that we adopted asked for 2 maintenance people to be put in the Parks and Recs department.
So I'm not against having discussions on any of that stuff. The issue that I have is that when I look at how we've handled these manpower issues in the past, is if we take the number of work hours that are required to do the parks correctly, and we assign people to go do that. Either we hire new ones or we transfer people. If we hire new people to do that, then that means the current staff of people have a lot of like free time. I don't know what you would call it. So what are we going to do with them to fill that gap? Because let's assume it takes 400 hours a week, or 400 hours a month to do the parks, whatever the number is. And we've taken that hunk of time, put it over here in a separate unit. Now, this group is not doing that 400 hours. I would like to have a bigger discussion about how we look at both sides of the thing to figure out, maybe there's an additional 400 hours of work that's not being done, that could be done, and they could go off and do that. But I've not heard the detail on that, so.
Or move, I think we always thought it would be moving people, maybe, or whatever.
And then I've heard that, we just moved 2 people over, and they're dedicated to Parks and Rec. And then there's times during the season, let's say Christmas season, when we're putting up stuff. Do you move them back, or are they temporarily assigned back? I'd like just to work some of that out before we get to the final vote on something like that. There's multiple ways we can do it. I'm not for or against any particular one. I just like more discussion about how the total number of hours that are applied work. Okay.
Understanding fully the issues, I have to say, I think we're getting into some overreach by this board. We do not manage how the departments are run, how the staff is organized, and staffing is allocated. We need to hear from the manager what the best ways are. And of course, she's basing that on what the department heads have said. And then we figure out how to pay for it.
Agree to it. So that there's 2 sides of that. We have a fiduciary responsibility to the citizens, that it's not an open-ended budget. We're just not hiring 100,000 people to do something. So we have that aspect. Is Rich all going to figure out the manpower allocation? Absolutely not. First of all, I'm not smart enough to do that. And second of all, that's not my job. I agree with you. But at some point, listening to the past budget discussions, speaking for me, I just think that there's not enough detail in the manpower allocations and stuff that if we're going to make rules up or suggestions for the next manager, that might be something on the plate. Because it's going to be way beyond June.
One of,
I may think I have a brilliant idea for how to organize that, and I do. At any rate, it's not for me to say. I want to hear from the department heads and then the city manager
how they think it would best work, and then we figure out whether we are going to fund it that way or not, period. It's not, this isn't our job.
One of the things that we've talked about today that I don't think is actually prioritized is the police department. So, I mean, we're hearing from Bonnie and Chief that we need to prioritize that. So, and we didn't. So maybe we should say that that's an important thing for us or not.
Well, I mean, it was my plan, because of the new board members, to bring back Mosley Architects, and let's revamp, re-show you what you've seen before, although we need a new front facade. And then some possibilities of location. So we're going to be doing that, I think, what we talked about, April, Chief? So we'll be doing that. We aren't letting this leave. We are going to continue to push.
Clearly, if we're going to build a police station, we're going to keep our police force.
I just wanted to add two comments. Bonnie brought up the fire tax and how that impacts your funding for fire service. I call that an interlocal agreement between more than one jurisdiction, interlocal. And those agreements, I believe, are someplace that maybe some synergy can be reached with other communities nearby. When you talk about the concept of Parks and Rec, I think about Long Beach Road becomes Oak Island very quickly. And how could you work with the neighboring communities perhaps to get some synergy from that? And then the second thing I want to bring up is kind of along the lines of where Lance was going. The water and sewer expense relocation, the costs that are currently being borne by your water and sewer fund, I'd be willing to help with that. That's something that I did an awful lot of work with in my former life. And as part of my role as a consultant, I can assist with that as well. So I offer my services on that. I was not sure how the electric fund played into that conversation, and so
One picks up a certain percentage too of the staff, so that would just stay as is. But the gap is 1.2 million, but the board has decided and the county's agreed to take 1.2 million of our fund balance to subsidize next year. But as I said to them, that's a recurring expense and you're using one-time monies. That's really a no-no. So I'm not sure we're going to have as much of an impact this year, but the following year, it's just going to happen again.
yeah.
So there has to be a long-range plan. So yes, Ann, I will call you.
Okay. Well, I guess where I'm going with that is to look at overall cost allocation and see if there's any productivity that we could get out of somewhere else. So, but that's it. Yes, please call me. Thank you so much. Y'all did a good job. And I think your staff has a good document to work with here. There'll be plenty of other stuff in a recommended budget that has ongoing expenditures for your programs that already exist. Everything is not new. There's a good deal of stuff that is ongoing and maintaining the great city that you have. And then with that comment, I believe Bonnie wanted to wrap up.
Well, I
The
think
meeting.
Lance brought it up too, is I think the hard thing is we have all these things, but if you're going to pay for even a quarter of this, I would say the tax rate's going up, and I know you don't want to hear that either. So that's going to be the hard balance. I have a few ideas, but I don't think I want to say it until I talk to Lance and Dory, because that means double the work. But I think we're going to have to look at a few different options here, and there's going to be a lot of tough decisions. But you got to start somewhere to keep these buildings up or tear them down, as some of us would like to do with some park and rec buildings. So, we'll have a plan that you can take a look at. And thanks, Ann, for doing this.
But as you go forward with this, and we've had this discussion 3 years ago, probably. You talked about bond rating. We don't know what our bond rating is because the last time we did one was 2002, I believe was the date that I was told. And Dorothy brought us a mechanism for establishing what our bond rating was, and then later I was told that that actually wasn't correct. Is it correct that you could pay a fee to one of the three organizations that does the bond ratings, and they will give you a bond rating even though you're not asking for a bond? It would be rolled into the normal bond price when you did a bond, but that would allow us to at least understand the options that we have and what those costs might be. So I would like to, sometime down in the very near future, reconsider that vote, which was to turn it down. Don't spend it was $6,000, I remember the number. It was $6,000 to pay for it. But I think we're at a point now that we have to figure out what are all of the options that are in front of us. If we went to a bond, how does that work? I mean, none of us were doing this stuff in 2002. So how does that work? What is the long-term range of it? The interest rates have gone up since the time we had the conversation. So all of those things need to be played out. So I would like us to start looking down that road as well.
I would suggest that you have bond counsel come in and do it. That's what a bond counsel person is for. I wouldn't necessarily go to the rating agencies first. Have the bond counsel come in. That way you'll understand how it works. He can tell you about how much it costs, because it's not cheap at all to do it, because I've done it too many times. And what you're going to need to get a bond rating, because you need a lot of information. Well, Ann would know that one. But I would say have bond counsel. I can definitely have Paul come down and give you a presentation on how it works. And I think that would be very informative.
I would be certainly in favor of that, at least having the information given to us so we understand how that all works. That would be terrific. Okay. So, do you have any other comments, ma'am?
No, we beat the time.
We beat the time. I want to thank the staff for coming in here and sharing your thoughts with us. This has been very informative. I look forward to the next steps of how we actually turn that into something and how we come back and have the further discussions, which I'm assuming will be the lead-in for the budget cycle, which always is an interesting and fun time. So with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess that was a Freudian slip on my part. Alderman Mosteller, do you have any further comments?
No, again, thank staff, thank Ann for being here. Awesome.
Okay. Alderman Carroll.
The only thing I'd like to comment on is the 1.2 or so shortage. I really think that we have got to work as hard as we can to not use that money unless we absolutely have to. It'd be great for us to figure out a budget that doesn't include that. I know that's not possible, but as we look at our budget over the next few months, I think that would be a good step, because if we don't do it this year and we wait until next year, that hike is going to be significantly higher, and it won't come with the gradual effects that we might be able to do otherwise. So.
Alderman Davis.
Only this. How are we going to share this with the public? Because, we think we know what our priorities are, but, for example, if we were to go with an effort to do a bond issue, what are the priorities of the public, and would they even support it? Would we be putting good money after bad? I've lived in places where people were just genetically geared not to approve a bond issue. They just don't want to spend that money.
whether it's on schools, on sewers, on parks. So what I'm really saying here is before, as we enter into our budget discussions, can we perhaps have a town hall meeting where we share all of this and ask the public, here, tell us which of these are your top 3, your top 5.
I mean, we could do that. The other thing Cheyenne just reminded me of is we have a software product now that she's been using, the Polko, and they do surveys. Because, you don't get your average Joe to come to these meetings is the problem. So how do you get a wider viewpoint of what's going on? So we will investigate that and see if we can put something together and using your items. But, I've never seen a road bond referendum fail. That's one thing that always passes.
So, and can you educate me on this? In North Carolina, do all bonds have to have a referendum?
Revenue bonds do not, but yes, general obligation, yes.
Good enough. Alderman Spencer?
I'll try to be short. There is a lot to talk about. The will of the people. I want to satisfy as many people and make everyone happy, but I don't think we've all got the same motivations and the same wills, the same ideas of what Southport is and is not. And at a point, we're going to have to take responsibility for our jobs. And it's not to satisfy, it's to build the future, the business model that will work, not that will please an itch or a scratch. So the will of the people is going to be hard to come up with because we're so diverse. And again, we have different perspectives. So we're going to have to stand strong. And yes, we want input, but we've also got to say, yes, we know the problems. We've been given the problems. We've got to make decisions. And we are revenue poor. My parents always told us we were property poor, and I know what it talks about, but we're revenue poor. If we don't have the revenue, if I don't have my income in my home, I don't pay my bills. So we have to have consistent revenue that's not doled out. So thank you so much. This is so important. Appreciate you being here, Ann. Thank you so much.
Alderman Lane?
At a list of 29 items that we put together, there's a great deal of commonality. Some of the things kept being mentioned over and over and over again by all of us. So there's some common thinking here. Now, to take all this stuff and put it together in an action plan that's short-term, medium-term, long-term, and then where's the cash coming from to pay for it? And we got to do all this in such a manner that we're looking after the people of Southport and the city of Southport. That's our overall goal, to meet their needs. And that's a daunting task, I think, and we're going to have to work long and hard to get that. It's going to be interesting to see what we put together. And thank you for being here to kind of lead us through this.
Am I good? Do you have one more thing, or can I entertain a motion to adjourn? Is there a second? Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.